Elections have just concluded in Taiwan, and a new president is now going to be taking oath of office. President Lai Ching-te, also known as William Lai. Now, he won 40% of the vote. He has a track record for standing up for his nation. He has a track record of maintaining the independent voice of Taiwan on the face of this planet. What does this tell us about Taiwanese sentiment? What the people there are thinking? In the middle of, let's not kid ourselves, a new Cold War which has already begun. It's not something that will happen, may happen, it is happening. It is happening because every time the North Koreans file a ballistic missile and create air raid warnings in Japan, let's not assume that it's Kim Jong-un who wants that to happen, and he's the one making the missiles. We know where they come from. We know who started off both North Korea's ballistic missile program as well as their nuclear program. When the Iranians are funding Hezbollah or Hamas, Iran as a country that itself has no funds and is receiving bailouts, guess from whom? In Beijing. That a proxy war is taking place. We call it here on NewsX World War C. Within this context, Taiwan plays a very important, not only geostrategic role, but you need to fundamentally understand that as you're watching this telecast, whether you're watching it on a TV set or a mobile phone, in front of me there's a camera, there's a computer screen, my mobile phone, a production control room. In between, there are uplinks and satellites. All of them are running off silicon chips. And the biggest and best companies in the world, other than Qualcomm, are all in Taiwan. Controlling silicon is like controlling oil. Now, you all know the history and geography of this. So let's jump into the present context without any further ado. Robinder Sachdev joining us on the broadcast. Dr. Satoru Nagao is with us as well. Roger Liu is joining us, and Sana Hashmi, who is a fellow of the Taiwan Asia Exchange Foundation, is joining us on the broadcast as well. Let me start with you, Professor Liu. What do you make of the election that has just concluded, sir?
Well, I think the election reflects a very interesting result. Well, of course, William Lai actually got elected along with his running mate, Vicky Michelle. And they enjoy like some margin against number two. So this is actually a very clear indicator that the Taiwanese people don't want CCP, the party state, to roll over them and then send out a clear signal to the CCP and to the world. But at the same time, we have to notice that, well, although after the 8 years of the DPP rule, the younger generation of the Taiwanese voters, they still feel that there are some space for improvement, especially they are focusing on the domestic issues. Because now, although for the past few years, Taiwan has been doing great in economics and Taiwan has been doing great in semiconductor, like you have mentioned. But inside of Taiwan, actually, there is a growing dissatisfaction among the young people regarding the lower salaries and regarding the unaffordable flats and apartments and their future. So they are voting the newly rising party called TPP, or Taiwan's People Party, led by the equivalent of UP of Taiwan, who is the ex-Taipei mayor, who is also a doctor, Dr. Ko Wen-je. So he will be playing a crucial minority for the future because he is the key minority to make things happen in the legislative yuan, the unicameral legislature of Taiwan, because none of the big parties, the DPP, either the DPP or the KMT, enjoys the clear majority in the legislative yuan. So if they want to pass, if the DPP government is going to pass any law, they are going to work with other parties. So in that sense, TPP, the new party that has only 8 seats in the parliament will be playing a very crucial role for the future.
All right. Sana, sitting there, what has been the tone and tenor of the electoral cycle? Has it been about domestic issues because food, water, security, employment all matter to everyone all across the world, regardless of where they are? Or has it been in the context, as it often is, of China?
I think it's a mix of both. Taiwan, like any other country, is also focusing on domestic issues. And in fact, a lot of foreign media was here to cover the elections. And one of the main articles that they wrote about is how the youth of Taiwan is looking at the election. How are they going to vote? And one of the major issues that came up was the lower salaries in comparison to other Asian tigers, as well as the housing, the rental, how unaffordable it is becoming. But apart from that, there is also a looming threat on Taiwan that has been there for decades. And I think this election, the result, and this is unprecedented win for DPP. This is for the very first time in the history of Taiwan that one party has won third consecutive term. So this is very important for people. Local issues, domestic issues are very important, but China threat remains alive. And I think it's a mix of both when we analyze how Taiwanese voter voted this time.
Okay, Dr. Nagao, let me bring you in because as I began this telecast, as we speak, we are being told of reports of more ballistic missiles being fired from North Korea. This is not the first time they've happened. In Taiwan itself, we've lost count of the number of airspace violations that have happened in the past 18 months. At times, there have been 30, 40, 70, 100 violations per day. Almost on a regular basis, as being reported by the Taiwanese press. The Chinese spy balloons are over Taiwan as we speak. What is the escalation? Is it a new Taiwan Straits crisis? Is it something below that? What is currently happening, and how does the election result factor into this?
Thank you very much for asking. In this case, we should not forget one fact. Which leader leads Taiwan is not affecting the security of Taiwan too much. I simply said, even if the Taiwan's president is more friendly to China, still there is a possibility China will attack Taiwan militarily. Because Taiwan crisis has happened because China's rapid military modernization is more faster than the US military modernization. So US-China military balance is changing. In this case, China starts to believe China can win if start to invade Taiwan. Such kind of situation makes China to choose a bold adventure, which is invading Taiwan. So that's why, yes, collaboration of North Korea and China is a big threat. Or Russia, China, North Korea collaboration is more serious. It is true. And Taiwan's election is a very important factor. That is true. But at the same time, most important part of security situation in this region is US-China military balance. So we need, as an ally of the United States or partner of the United States, we need to fill the gap to deter China's activity in this region. That is a solution. So Taiwan choose a good leader, courageous leader, I believe. That's why it is more easier for us to raise our deterrent power. So that's why this is good news. We do not need to worry about something provocation from China.
Okay.
That is my answer. Thank you.
Interesting thought. Rabindra Sachdev, let's look at it from the Indian perspective, okay? What we would think desirable, and of course, not always what you think helps, but what we would think desirable is that logically, the Chinese face 7 fronts. One of them is the Indo-Tibet border. The other is the Taiwan Straits. You would think that that would automatically suggest that there is a great congruity of interests between India and Taiwan. In real terms, we have not seen much change. In real terms, we are not yet upgrading our recognition of Taiwan. The Taiwanese ambassador here is still called a trade representative. On the other side, we have not really seen all the semiconductor projects that we were hoping that would come. We might yet see them, but so far it hasn't happened. Several years have now elapsed of the Taiwanese majors coming up and setting up semiconductor plants in India. So for some reason, there is either confusion or caution? Is that perfectly okay? Is it to be expected, or have we missed a trick here?
Thank you, Rishabh. Deep questions. Yeah, I mean, it's a bunch of everything, but I would take another view, purely from a selfish realpolitik perspective. China-Taiwan tensions are okay for us. The more China gets involved, the more America gets involved, the more they both get bogged down with each other, the more it lessens the pressures and tensions on us, hopefully. Unless China, within this whole scenario, wants to create a distraction and then, does some misadventure with India to distract its real intent on Taiwan. Otherwise, if it's China and America facing off each other, spending more of their, monies and positioning their forces and all of that on that theater, to that extent, it's okay with us, I would say. Yes, to the extent of the impact on global economy, it would have, the entire disruption of sorts. That does affect our economy, so that is somewhere there. But as to your first other question, I think India should definitely, yes, ramp up as much as we can, or generally, our relations with Taiwan to the extent possible. Why we've, if not missed the boat, why there has been no, not much acceleration there is, but there's scope for a lot more.
Okay.
We should be doing that.
But Rabinderji, almost on a monthly basis, it happened just a few months ago, and I'm sure we were here discussing it, when the Chinese publish a new map and they say, okay, now Sikkim, Arunachal, all of these are part of China. We don't reciprocate. We can, but we choose not to. We don't reciprocate. We have an association with the Taiwanese, but like I said, we haven't upgraded their representation status. We don't officially recognize them as a country because we believe hasn't been reiterated from a long point of time, but nor has it been countermanded on our support of the One China policy. So why do we steer clear of it? Why? Because it's not worth us getting involved in it. What's the reason?
I mean, a great point. I think partly we are also going with the global trend. I mean, worldwide, how many countries have recognized? I mean, all countries, I think even Biden the other day, he said they believe in a one China principle, right? So one, we are going with this thing. And secondly, maybe in a sense, we don't want to irritate China further to whatever it is. See, in our big picture interest, I think, again, very real, this thing speaking, whatever it can be, we should have peace for the next 10, 20 years so that our economy develops at a fast pace, right? So not to say that if China does something, we will not retaliate. We should, absolutely. But I think perhaps that's the matrix playing out in our foreign policy, that do whatever we can, definitely, yes, to counter or to build up, blocks around China, but maybe not do something unnecessarily, which creates more tension. So that's one.
Okay. So, Professor Liu, if we look at the current context of global affairs, where there is a continuing with no clear end in sight war on in the Ukraine, I don't think we're close to an end game. I certainly don't see one yet that we can say, okay, in the next few weeks it's going to be over. The situation in Israel and Gaza isn't looking like coming to a ready conclusion in the next few days and weeks either. So if you're sitting in Beijing and you're watching these developments happening, and you're watching the Russians and Ukraine, you're watching what's happening in Israel, are you now more confident on taking action on China's border, be it land borders with Taiwan, or do you feel less confident?
Thank you very much for the very interesting question. Well, I am going to take, this is very hard. Well, of course, I'm not Xi Jinping, but the current situation, like you have mentioned, is very complicated. The war is still brewing in Ukraine, and we don't see it's going to be stopped in a very near future. And while the Israel-Hamas war is going to be very likely to be expanded to another region while they're attacking the southern part of Lebanon, and it can be brought into Iran as well. So it depends. I mean, if the war is going to be a world war, like it's going to be spilled over to a lot of regions to involve more and more important players in the region, I think Xi Jinping will view this as an opportunity to expand, or at least to use a military exercise or military means as a way to force the Taiwanese government, the new government, to sit at the negotiation table to accept some negotiation terms in favor of Beijing. It is very likely because people have been talking about that, especially the interregnum between now and the May the 20th, the new government, the official establishment of the new government of Taiwan after the election, there is still some window of opportunity that the Chinese government or the CCP, the party state, is going to use their military forces to send out their signals trying to force Taiwanese people or the new government to accept the terms unfavorable to them. So I think this is a very crucial year. So that's why you see the United States and other great power governments are sending out warnings to Beijing, to Xi Jinping, not to underestimate the decision or the determination of the, especially the U.S. and its allies,
Professor
to maintain the status quo.
Yeah, but Professor Liu, it's in the end, it's a game of bluff. It's a game of chicken. All right. So the question is that if one of these transgressions, and as we speak, there are several Chinese ships in Taiwanese waters. As we speak, they're already there. They're there every single day, if not every week. So it's happening every day. One of these days, it might just not be a mere transgression. It might be, even if not into Taiwan proper, one of the islands, it might be an invasion force. Will the Americans fire a shot? Will the Japanese fire shots against the Chinese if push comes to shove?
Well, we don't know, but it's not easy to occupy Taiwan. So if even the CCP, the party state, when they're doing this, when they're choosing to use the military options, it must come with a political purpose they are going to achieve. So the political purpose is to subdue the Taiwanese resistance, the will to resist of Beijing. So we will have to see what will happen during the time. But I think it's very likely that they are going to use some smaller scale military operations to show to their audiences of interest that they are really serious about this.
Yeah. So what can potentially happen in a scenario is that some of the islands indeed they go and occupy, but as Professor Liu is saying, an invasion of Taiwan is probably very, very unlikely to take place anytime near soon. But then who knows? Who thought what would happen in Ukraine 5 years ago? That push comes to shove, another crisis that dates back 20, 30 years in 1991. So let me get Dr. Nagao back into this conversation. Dr. Nagao, let's take a bird's eye view. Let's take a larger picture.
It's
In the current context, do you suspect, given that the Chinese economy and internal issues are existing, if you're the Chinese establishment, if you're Xi Jinping or the CCP, are you too busy dealing with internal problems right now to look to venture? Or because you have internal problems, you need a distraction, and a distraction on one of these frontiers might be the best thing?
Yeah, if we try to run from the lesson in the Falkland conflict, yes, the distract option is one of the options. But invading Taiwan is a very difficult issue, so that should not be the main issue if I am the leader of China, because this is more serious war. Invading Taiwan is a serious war. But I'm worrying the current situation because of another reason. When China built artificial island, we try to remember, that time China underestimates skill of Obama administration. So if China underestimates skill of the Biden administration, there is a possibility China want to get something before the next US president will come. This year is year of the US president election. And now, the last 3 years, we can see it since the withdrawal from Afghanistan, many anti-US leaders in the world underestimate the skill of the Biden administration. So under such kind of situation, Russia invaded Ukraine, and Middle East, Hamas attacked Israel, and this disrupt US strategy to withdraw from the Middle East, to redeploy their resources to the Indo-Pacific. So these things has happened every year. So now 2024, the last year of the Biden administration first time. So I'm worrying if China underestimates the skill of the Biden administration, they will do something in, I don't know where exactly, but there's a possibility that will happen. Thank you.
Okay. Sana, now from a larger viewpoint, and I am taking a larger viewpoint. In the risk assessment of the Chinese, does it make a difference if a crisis is born? Because I'm sure that there were many people in China who would have thought that the COVID pandemic was a crisis from which you could make an opportunity out of it. That for great change to come, first the world must burn. Having been through COVID, in which China did not come out covered in glory. In fact, it was democracies, India, the US seemed to have handled it a lot better in the end than the Chinese state could. If you are in China, are you more convinced on your ability to create pandemonium in the world with all the crises that are happening, many of which have a Chinese hand, or are you now taking it slow?
It's a very interesting question, and I think we really need to deliberate upon that. But I feel that it's just something that China is just not ready to invade Taiwan. I would definitely agree with Roger here. There are economic reasons. And if we look back at what Xi Jinping said in the New Year Eve's message, and it's very rare that a Chinese leader is actually accepting that there are economic issues, that people are facing issues within the country. So then there is a recent Bloomberg report actually said that if China decides to invade Taiwan anytime soon, the cost of invasion would be around US $10 trillion. So imagine if there is sluggish economy, militarily China is not ready, and if you have the US and Japan coming to Taiwan's aid. So this is something that, and if the outcome is uncertain, it's not going to be easy for China to invade Taiwan. There will be resistance, there will be sanctions. And now more and more countries, international community are becoming aware about Taiwan and becoming aware about how it would be if Taiwan becomes a part of China. So this is an outcome that the world is not ready. The world is not going to be silent if this happens tomorrow. So I don't really see any kind of invasion happening. But also at the same time, I would say that if we are just analyzing the election outcome, if we are saying that President-elect Lai, who's kind of considered or categorized as pro-independence, and if he has come, China is going to invade Taiwan, I don't think that is an indication of an invasion at all.
I fairly agree. One shouldn't leap to conclusions, but the reason we're having this conversation, of course, is to examine best case scenarios and worst case scenarios. And that's the worst case scenario. So I'll leave the last thought with Rabinder Sachdev. And Rabinder Sachdev, I'm posing difficult ones because obviously there's no straight answer. If you and I knew the straight answer, we would be running global geopolitics. But it's a tough one. And the reason it's a tough one, sir, is because as things stand, is Taiwan today the Poland of 1939? For people watching the broadcast, Taiwan does not have strategic association. It has mutual defense treaties with the Japanese, with the Americans. So is it the Poland which means that if any territorial integrity of Taiwan is threatened, automatically it's open world war? Potentially it can happen. Or is it Ukraine that nobody else will come and fight? They might send you the weapons, but nobody else will come and fight.
Quick bullet points. Probably it's more the latter, more the Ukraine, because whatsoever happens, I don't imagine, American missiles hitting Beijing or mainland China, right? Or Japanese missiles hitting China and vice versa. In a big picture, you see, in terms of the timing, let's work backwards. 100 years from 2049, the big one when they want to get over a century of humiliation, that's one outside target. One earlier target is Xi has repeatedly said he and his generation owe it to the next generation not to leave the Taiwan issue unresolved. Now, assuming Xi has another 10 years of active productive life and the leaders around him, that means the outside is another 10 years, right? The nearer one, as is being talked about, often is around the year 27, 28. The key thing in that is that, you see, there's a window of opportunity for China, because what's happening the past few years, suddenly America is ramping up its defense preparedness, its navy is declining, it's investing urgently now in Guam, etc., etc. America will take between anywhere at least 5 to 10 years to kind of, catch up back. And China is in a better situation. So China may decide to launch whatever adventure it does, before the US becomes overwhelmingly, powerful again in a sense. So that window could be around the year 2027, 28, etc. Lastly, to the point, economy versus security, how the Chinese economy is doing. This Politburo and this term of Xi Jinping, it seems that he's paying more attention to issues of security, though, of course, economy, they want to also keep balanced and get the best. But if you see in their Politburo, okay, he has reduced the number of people who are finance and economic experts. There are more people with expertise in security. So therefore, economy or the state of economy may not be the reason to hold back China, because in pursuit of its larger vision.
Well, we are all being difficultly asked to read the mind of a very closed group within Beijing, what they are thinking and what they are willing to risk. It's almost impossible to do. You can create scenarios, and the only question that remains is, are the Taiwanese being harassed on a daily basis today? The answer is more so than in recent years. Does that create an environment of perpetual siege, fear, mind games? Yes. Does that necessarily equate into the Chinese in Beijing doing anything more? We can't say. But don't kid yourselves. There were economic issues that were rippled across the world due to Ukraine, food and oil being one of them. There are global issues that are rippling from Gaza. In every university in America, there is polarization taking place. Let's not kid ourselves that the North Koreans have resurfaced with their ballistic missile tests for some reason. It suits the Chinese to keep the world distracted with other problems. The question is, for what purpose? Because they have too much to deal with in their own home and hearth, or because they're planning something? We don't know. I thank my guest.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.